Welcome to the Family Builders Podcast. No matter what our family dynamic is, we can all use some help from time to time. Our hope and prayer is that this podcast is a help and a blessing to you each and every week. And now our host, Pastor David Moore, and co-host, Pastor A.J. Harold.
Hello, fellow builders. Welcome to another episode of the Family Builders Podcast. This is your host, Pastor David Moore from Lakeview Baptist Church in Newcastle, Oklahoma. And joining me from an undisclosed secure location deep in the Midwest is my good friend and faithful co-host, Pastor A.J. Harold. And I guess technically you're not yet at this undisclosed secure location deep in the Midwest, but by the time this plays, you will be.
Yes.
We're recording it ahead of time, and Brother Harold will be traveling with his family and going to the ISC next week. And so by the time this episode airs, they will be concluding the International Convention, right?
Yes, and I'm by faith saying we had a great time and we won all the awards.
You made it there safely in spite of the tornadoes and the softball-sized hail and driving the van with 7 million miles on it. Yeah, no, we're by faith. Awesome.
Yeah, we're
It's all
good.
great. Yeah, good deal. I'm so glad that our prayers were answered. You do realize if any of that doesn't work out, we're going to have to re-record this.
Yes.
So if our listeners are hearing this episode, this version of it, you know everything worked out good.
Yes,
All right.
The power of editing.
Yes. Amen. Well, it's good to be back here for another episode of the Family Builders. And hopefully you family builders out there are being encouraged and edified by our discussions on this podcast. I want to remind you of our email, familybuilderspodcast@gmail.com. If you have ideas for a topic you'd like to hear discussed, or if you have questions about previous topics, or wonderfully complimentary comments that you would like to make, we would love to hear from you at familybuilderspodcast@gmail.com. Drop us a line, let us know you're listening, and we may include your question or comment on the air, as it were, if you give us permission to. So we'd love to hear from you. Well, it's that time again for our weekly Builder's Tip. And Brother Harold, this week's Builder's Tip comes from a passion of mine, and that is the study of history. When this episode airs, we'll be observing the anniversary of the D-Day invasion, the Allied invasion of Normandy, France during World War II to throw out the Nazi invaders and oppressors. And, years ago in 2014, my wife and I took a trip to Europe for our 25th wedding anniversary. And one of the things we did was we took a train out to the Normandy region and we toured the sites out there. It took an entire day. It was far and away one of the highlights of our trip. And one of the things that was the most moving for me is part of the tour, you stood in the now empty concrete fortresses called pillboxes on the beach, and you looked out over the beach and you could see that from a very fortified position, the Nazi soldiers were firing on just the wide open expanses of sand and ocean that the Allied troops were coming in on. And you really were struck with the thought, how was anyone able to survive that? And then you go to the American cemetery there, where there's about 9,000 graves of American soldiers, row upon row upon row of marble crosses. And one thing, Brother Harold, that I was really struck by is on those marble crosses, they had engraved the date that the soldier died. And you realize all 9,000 of those soldiers died within a day or two of each other.
Wow.
And that wasn't even all of the ones who perished. There was many who were never found. The remains either were washed out to sea or, not to be gross, but just in war, sometimes bodies are just literally blown to pieces. There were some who were their bodies were shipped back to the States, some who were wounded, perished later, but it was a great sacrifice. You cannot stand in that place and not be aware of the cost of freedom. And that is why we study history. As a family builder, my family needs to know not just history in general, but our family's history. I heard a person say a couple years ago, some parts of history are ugly, some parts of history are beautiful, but it's all just history. Whether it's an ugly part of history like slavery, or a beautiful part of history like the forming of the Constitution, it's all history. It all needs to be told. Your family, your children, your spouse have your own history. Some things will be maybe unfortunately a little bit ugly. You don't need to dwell on those, but you need to at least acknowledge that those times exist. You absolutely need to make sure that your children have a memory of the things that have happened as they grew up in your home, so that as they build their families, they have a frame of reference for the things that they do. We sometimes call these traditions or family rituals, but it's all history. Your builder's tip for this week: build your family on history.
I had the privilege of preaching a missions conference a few years ago now in New Orleans, Louisiana. And my entire family couldn't come. I don't remember why. I have a memory of it's when Sadie was born, and she was born suddenly. We call her Suddenly Sadie. She's the one born in the driveway. Long story there. But anyway, I went to Louisiana with just AC and Abel, if my memory serves me well. And by their church in Louisiana, there's the World War II Museum.
Hmm.
And pastor said, "You've got to, I have to take you. You've got to go." I was excited to go. I didn't really know what we would see, but my boys really weren't excited. At the time, this is years ago, they just were like, "Oh, great, a museum." When we got there, Pastor Moore, over and over, there were a handful of World War II vets, and they all came up to us at different times, and my sons were like the youngest kids in the whole place. It was a lot of adults. And they said, "Are these your sons?" I said, "Yes, sir." They said, "Thank you for bringing them here. Thank you for," and then, we'll tell the boys, "I'm glad you're here. Take it all in, read every plaque." And
Mm-hmm.
so by the end of the tour and by the end of the museum, we even got to watch a movie there in the museum, and they had a greater appreciation for history. And now these two are great readers. And, years later, they're doing really well. They have a much better appreciation for today because they understand or what happened yesterday. So I appreciate the builder's tip, and it's real, families. We've got to teach and educate our children on all things that pertain to life and godliness.
Amen. Well, it's along the lines of teaching our children. Many of our listeners homeschool, and or they're considering homeschooling. I just want to remind you of our sponsor, Midwest Christian Academy. Midwest Christian Academy is a full-service, fully accredited homeschool organization. They provide services such as diagnostic testing for your children in order to identify learning gaps. They will provide a full scope of curriculum prescribed for your child. They have academic projections for high schoolers, as well as transcripts of the credits completed. And upon completion of all the work, your student will receive an accredited high school diploma. This is so important when you go to fill out college applications or even to enter the military. You need to have an accredited high school diploma. So go to MidwestChristianAcademy.com and see what kind of services they offer that can help you on your homeschool journey. If you use the code BUILDERS in the referral line, receive a 50% discount on the first year's registration fee. Midwest Christian Academy, do good by your students and give them a Christian education. Do great by your students and enroll them in Midwest Christian Academy. All right, Brother Harold, wanted to get right into our discussion this week, our topic. And we had actually, the idea for this topic comes from a listener. And just in full disclosure, we're recording this, as we've mentioned before, we record ahead of time. And because of the Harold's family's travels, we're recording this way ahead of time. And actually, just before we recorded the last episode, Brother Harold told me about this suggestion for a topic, and instantly the Lord gave me some talking points and just laid on my heart this would be a good topic to discuss. And so we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. This is, in my mind and my heart, this is less than an hour old, Brother Harold.
Wow.
So I don't know. I don't know if you've been working on it longer than that, but hopefully you got some stuff. But and the topic is this: how does a Christian family participate in summertime activities? I want to take you to a passage of scripture in 2 Timothy chapter 4, where the Apostle Paul is giving exhortation to young Timotheus. And the context here is about a pastor in the ministry, but it applies to every aspect of Christianity. Paul writes in chapter 4, verse 1 of 2 Timothy, I charge thee therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom. Preach the word. Be instant, in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and doctrine. You know, Brother Harold, sometimes people get the idea that because they're on vacation from being a Christian. They're on vacation from being a church member. I've actually heard people, I hope, most of the time, jokingly say, oh, it's okay to do this. I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
You know, before I moved to Oklahoma, I was pastoring in the state of Wisconsin in a very much a tourist town. And in fact, the town has the reputation of being the place of the world's largest indoor water parks. And you know, used to be you'd go to a restaurant or a place of business and they'd have a sticker on the door that said no shoes, no shirt, no service. This town does not have that. I mean, literally, you would walk into a restaurant and there'd be people, males and females, sitting in there with hardly any clothing on at all. And in the summertime, it was terrible. We would, as a family, we would just not go to a lot of places because there was no way to go there without my kids being exposed to all the immodestly dressed people. It was ridiculous. Now, different people have different standards of what they wear when they go swimming and stuff, and we're not going to get into all that today. This is only a half-hour podcast. But I wanted to look at it from this perspective, in the perspective of building a family, beyond what we've talked about at length, Brother Harold, about not putting things in front of you that are impure and immodest and so forth, beyond being financially responsible and all these things, the importance of a season of getting away as a family. Now, when I was a kid, you know, this was before any online hotel reservation service like Expedia or hotels.com or anything. None of that existed. If you wanted to make a reservation at a hotel, you either had to go to the hotel or you had to call them on your telephone, which I know this is a surprise to some people in the younger generation. But yes, people used to make phone calls on their telephone.
Yeah.
I was called a boomer because I told someone to call me on the phone. And they said, okay, boomer. And I said, well, let me tell you something. At least this boomer knows how to use the phone.
Yeah.
Back in those days, my parents would plan a family vacation of whatever length we could afford and be able to go. And it generally consisted of many, many hours riding in our family vehicle, station wagon, van, whatever. We'd travel for many hours. We'd see the countryside. We'd stop at roadside places. We would have picnic lunches. We didn't stop at McDonald's or fast food places. We stopped at a rest area. We got out the cooler, and my mom would make sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly, or bologna, or ham, or whatever, and set out chips and drinks. And Dad would play catch with the kids, or take us for a little walk or something to stretch our legs. And then when the food was ready, we'd all gather around the picnic table. We'd pray, and then we would eat, and then we'd stretch a little bit more and run around a little bit, get the wiggles out, and then finally load everything back in the car and then travel for many more hours to get to a hotel or a campground or wherever we were staying. And Brother Harold, some of the greatest memories of my life were those times, because my dad always made it a point to tell the church folks, hey, I'm gone with my family. Unless it's an absolute emergency, don't call me.
Yeah.
This is their time. And so he wasn't, I mean, back then we didn't have cell phones anyways, but he would let somebody know where we were going. They could get a hold of us if they needed to, calling the hotel or the place we were staying or whatever. But he made it a point to let people know this was my family's time, not anybody else's time. That was not taking a vacation from being a Christian. That was him focusing his attention on his family,
Right.
getting a recharge and a reset, giving his family a recharge and a reset. And I would just encourage our listeners. I know I know a lot of people who kind of brag about the fact that they never take a vacation. And I mean this with all the love I have for you. That's dumb. That's not healthy for you. That's not good for your family.
Right.
If for no other reason, do you really want your kids to grow up and get married and produce grandchildren and then come back home and you can say, hey, kid, remember that 8-year period of time when I worked every day except Sunday and we never went anywhere and did anything as a family, but we saved up money? That's a great time of feeding your grandkids and your kids with your history. My wife and I, we didn't have a lot of money. We stayed in the cheapest hotels we could find that were safe. We didn't want to bring home any pets, if you know what I mean. We stayed in inexpensive hotels. We ate very inexpensive places, either picnics or, we'd go to a fast food place and tell the kids, okay, everybody gets a cheeseburger, a small fry, and a small drink. I remember, Brother Harold, we went to Yellowstone Park for our first really big family vacation, not going to any visiting relatives, but just going someplace for pure tourism. We went to Yellowstone and we stayed just outside of the park in what's called West Yellowstone in Montana. And it's a very much a resort town. This was back in 2004. And at that time, a Happy Meal at McDonald's was like $2 or $3. And we got there and went to take the kids to get food at McDonald's, and a Happy Meal was $9. We had 5 kids.
Wow.
Instead of lunch being about $15 or $20, I was looking at lunch being $60 to $70. So we went to a grocery store to buy food, and a loaf of bread that at home was like 47 cents or whatever. At the grocery store in West Yellowstone, it was like $6. A jar of peanut butter was $10. I mean, ridiculous prices. And my kids still talk about, at Yellowstone, Old Faithful, seeing the buffalo, seeing all the moose and the elk and all the beautiful scenery. You know what my kids talk about? Hey, remember that time at Yellowstone when Dad was so upset because the Happy Meal was $9? Oh, well, memories are memories, I guess. Those memories are important. That history is important. That time together that everybody dreads in the car, boredom for hours. Are we there yet? I'm tired. I'm stiff. she's poking me. He won't stop pestering me. I'm trying to read and he's breathing too loud. Yeah, I mean all the things that happen in a family vehicle on a long trip like that. You cannot know how important that is until you realize you didn't have it, and then it's too late. So, Brother Harold, I want to start this off with, if you have a family, do something.
Yeah, I
In the
agree.
time, I mean, if your kids are in a regular school where they have, start in August or September, go through May or June or whenever it is your school goes, use the summertime. Get away. You don't have to go far. One year our family vacation was we went to DeSmet, South Dakota, and saw the Little House in the Prairie House. And then we drove to Mitchell, South Dakota, and we saw the Corn Palace. Brother Harold, in all of your travels, have you seen the Corn Palace?
No, I haven't.
I'm disappointed in you.
I'm not.
Yeah. It's the Community Civic Center in Mitchell, South Dakota. And on the outside of this civic center, every year they take corn stalks, corn cobs, corn kernels, corn silk, and they make these intricate, incredible pictures on the outside of this building out of corn. It is amazing. And you pull up and you get out of your car, you look at it, you're like, this is incredible, the amount of work that it took. And also, they need a better cable TV provider in that town. That's what these people are doing with their spare time. But I mean, it's really incredible. It's really cool. Say, well, that's kind of lame. That's sort of a hokey thing. You know what my kids remember? They don't remember the pictures of the Corn Palace, but they remember us going there. They remember the time together in the car. I wasn't being cheap. We just didn't have any money at all. We barely could afford the gasoline for the trip. For my kids, the fun was staying in a hotel and going swimming that night.
Yeah, it's good.
They remember those times. That building of memories, that bonding time, that family time is essential for families.
Yeah, and I just want to address the we don't do this because we're believers. Well, that's great. We don't do things that would dishonor God. We don't go to places that God wouldn't want us to go. But that's only part of the coin. Saying we don't do this, but then not doing anything is not building your family. And so one of the things the listener was saying was, can you give us some alternatives? Like, how do we have fun in these summer months? Because we know we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. And Brother Moore is sharing these examples with you. I know for us, I'm not a big camper. I'm not big on hunting. I'm not big on that. I'm not against it at all. I just grew up inner city. It's just not something I grew up doing. But right now, I'm planning on our family. We call it glamping. I'm going to spoil the girls, give them a cabin, but we got a huge 14-person tent or something like it. It might be 18. I mean, this humongous big bag, this tent. We've got fishing gear and all this stuff. That's not what we do. That may sound familiar to some of you family builders, but this family, the Harold family, we don't do that. So doing something like this is rather unique for us. I already have the location picked, I already know what we're doing, and it's not that expensive. Don't allow the pennies to prevent you from making memories. Figure it out, set a budget, sell a kidney, do something to have fun with your family.
Disclaimer, we are not advocating for the selling of human organs.
Oh, I am. No, I'm just kidding.
Not editing. Okay. No, that's exactly right. And I think you hit the key, Brother Harold. You said, this is not something we normally do. This is unique for us.
Yeah.
That's the key. Let's say you don't have the time or the money. Maybe you don't have an extensive amount of paid vacation, but you could take maybe a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So take the Thursday and Friday off of work. Even if all you do is stay in your house, you know what? Don't sleep in your beds. Build a tent in your living room out of blankets.
Yeah.
Make popcorn and homemade chocolate milkshakes. sit around and watch an old movie or play games till late, everybody sleep on the floor, and the next day, go to the zoo, go to a local museum, just go to a park and let the kids play. Why are we doing this? Because it's different. I want you to know we're spending time together. We love you. Find something to do locally. And parents, I'm going to be kind of mean for a second. If what's holding you back from doing that is you think that would be boring, you're missing the point. Brother Harold, do you like sleeping on the ground?
No.
I was going to say, you've kind of passed that age barrier where camping and sleeping on the ground is fun. And now I got news for you, buddy. You're going to hurt.
No, no, no. You heard camping, but I said glamping.
That is true. That is true.
We will be having
But
some nice things in that tent. Trust me.
it's still a tent, brother.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
But you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for your family.
Yeah, and with them.
And doing it with your family. You're not sending them. You know, Brother Harold, one thing that makes my blood boil is when I hear parents talk about leaving their kids with the grandparents because the parents want to go on vacation from the kids. You don't deserve to be a parent at that point. I mean, that is a horrific thing to say and to do. Oh my goodness, what are you thinking?
Now, obviously, you mean those that never go with their kids as well.
Right. I'm not talking about. I mentioned in the builder's tip today for my wife and I for our 25th anniversary. We went to Europe. We went for 2 weeks. We left our younger kids with their married sister and her husband. And they were like, how come we didn't get to go? I said, because you weren't there 25 years ago when we got married. Plus, pretty expensive to go to Europe. We can only afford for the two of us to go. But you know what else we did that year? We took the kids on a trip with us.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, I know parents who won't take their kids on a vacation until they're teenagers.
Yeah, that's sad.
You're being kind. I'm less inclined to be kind on that one. It's beyond sad. It's selfish.
Yeah.
You know, the idea here of the spending time together and some ideas of what you can do. You know, I've even heard people refer to, and I was kind of referencing a staycation before, where you stay at your home and you do things locally. I know some people, they say, oh, well, we're having a staycation. And all they mean is we're going to take a few days off of work with pay, and then we're going to do housework, and we're going to do yard work, and we're going to do all this. You know what? Quit calling it a staycation and pretend like it's not just the usual work. The idea of a time apart and what the Lord in his word addressed as come apart and rest a while. The idea is a break from the usual for the purpose of recharge and reset. Parents, if you think your relationship doesn't need a recharge and a reset, you're wrong. And if you think that your children don't need a recharge and a reset, you're wrong. Now, I will say this, Brother Harold. Kids need a recharge and a reset with their family. I remember going to a camp one time. There was a young lady there she was about 16 years old, not named, aged about 16 years old. And I remember they were doing some activities at the camp, and I said, hey, you need to go do that. And she said to me, this is my vacation time. This is my time to get away. And I just don't want to do anything that I don't want to do. I said, you're 16. You don't get to get away. I got news for you. I mean, parents, quit treating this generation like that. The generations that come along that we all complain about how they act that way because we let them act that way. Make them stop it. Make them go on vacation with you. Your 16-year-old needs to go on vacation with you on the long car trip in the back of the station wagon, getting car sick, listening to dad sing 1,000 verses of, should be coming around the mountain and all that stuff. They have to do it. Make them, take their cell phones away, take their headphones away, make them sit there and listen to dad sing for hours. Why? Because it's important in season and out of season.
So I'm going to make up something here, an additional builder's tip.
Whoa. Da, 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 da. Something new.
Yeah, so I don't mean to be morbid, but I want you to take a serious thought about this. Make it easy for your children to say nice things at your funeral. Now, I don't mean to
Wow.
be morbid, but I want my children to go, I don't know which amazing story to tell.
That's great.
Dad was so awesome. He worked hard. Oh my goodness. And he was this, and he did business trips, and we didn't see him at times because he was just working 18-hour days. But those aren't the memories that come to the surface immediately.
Yeah.
Family builders, additional builders tip. Make it easy for your children to, or actually make it hard for your children to choose which story to tell at your
Right.
funeral.
That's great. My dad just celebrated his 84th birthday a couple weeks ago. And my dad has always been very low maintenance. When he graduated from high school, Brother Harold, they would always give the seniors a little quote by their picture in the yearbook, and he always used to kind of gloat that the quote for his picture, his senior picture in high school, was this: "His cares and wants are few," and that was kind of just his motto in life. Didn't want anything. I one time to buy him a present. I went in the store and I asked the clerk. I said, "What do you buy for the man who has nothing and likes it that way?" I mean, that's just kind of my dad. He's very, very low key, very low maintenance. So over the years, we have racked our brains to find good gifts for him. One year, my brother and I pitched in together, and we paid for an experience for him to go and ride in a NASCAR car on a racetrack. He's always loved car racing, and so we paid for him to go. And for like a month ahead of time, Brother Harold, he would go out to his driveway every night, and he would practice getting in and out of the car through the window of the car, so he wouldn't look bad. He was like in his 70s at the time, and so every night he's out in front of his house getting in and out through the window of his car. So then when a day came, he got to the racetrack, and they said, "Well, do you need a ladder or a stool?" He's like, "No, I got it." Just walked up to that car, threw his leg up through the window, and slid in. And the guys there were like, "Wow, he did that like a young man,"
I wonder what the neighbors thought.
Oh man, I can only imagine. Oh, how I wish they had the Ring doorbell technology back then to get the pictures, But so things like that we've tried to give him. This year, I came across something that I was like, man, I don't know if this is going to be great, but I am convinced this may be the best thing we've ever got him. It's a subscription service, and every week he gets an email. And that email includes a question. And there's a little button. He just taps the button and speaks into his phone and answers the question with a story from his life. Like the first question, I think, was, what's your earliest memory of going to school? And so he tapped the button and recorded himself telling the story of how the first day of school, he was so nervous and so worried. He convinced his teacher and his mom that he was sick and had to stay home. And so he started school the second day of school because he didn't want to be around all those people and away from his family and stuff like that. So it's just a cool story. I'm 57. I never heard that story before.
Yeah.
Now I have it on recording. And at the end of the year, it will take all of those recordings and it'll put them into a hardbound book for the family. And each page of the book will have a little QR code that future generations can look at and hear the stories in his own voice long after he's gone. So he's enjoying it because he's telling stories he maybe never told in his all of our lives, and everybody's passed on great wisdom and memories to us. And the idea there is the memories, the things that we carry with us. Every memory is a building block in your family. A couple years ago, maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago now, my sister had this idea where each of myself and my siblings would take a number of like 3x5 index cards, and we'd write out memories of our parents on those index cards, just things that happened, funny stories, touching things, whatever. And we put them all together. So for an entire year, my parents every day could pull one of those cards and read a memory that us kids had of them. A lot of those were based on vacations. Whether your vacation is in the summertime, whether your vacation is going on a long journey, whether your vacation is staying at home, building a tent in the living room, whether your vacation is just a couple of hours on the weekend or a couple of weeks, whether it's a holiday, going to see family, whatever it is, take that time away from the usual and spend it doing the unusual with your family. But remember, you're instant in season and out of season. Just because you're doing something out of the ordinary with your family doesn't mean you're not a Christian. Doesn't mean you're not acting like a Christian. Doesn't mean you're not serving the Lord. Brother Harold, these days, one of the hardest things for families traveling is finding a church that's the right kind of church. Now, you and I being pastors, we maybe have it a little bit easier because we know a lot of pastors. But even that, Brother Harold, the day and age in which we live, we don't know that a pastor is still preaching the same thing today as he did 5 years ago when I met him.
Yeah, you're right.
And there's times we're someplace where I don't know if there's a good church. I can't find out if there's a good church. And so we just have our own service, which is not ideal, but we never just skip. The idea is you're still the same believer with the same responsibility to the Lord in season and out of season. What an important message of consistency that is to give to our families.
Yeah, I was thinking about when we traveled, we always go to, look for a church. And a few weeks ago, traveled to Indiana, and I struggled, Pastor Moore, of finding a man to fill the pulpit for me because over the last 10 years, some of the men that I used to call, I can't call anymore because they decided to change. And I want to encourage you, family builders, the calendar doesn't give us a pass because
Right.
it's cold or because it's hot or because of this season or that season. We're to be instant, in season, out of season. In other words, we're right with God, whether it's in season popular or whether it's out of season unpopular. We're going to honor the Lord as a family. And so I appreciate the topic. Thank you, listener, for making this suggestion as well.
Absolutely. And that's about all the time we have for today. So, family builders, get out there, make some memories, build your families, plan some time to do the unusual so that your family knows that you're spending that time on them. But just remember, you're still responsible before the Lord for the things you do and say and believe. We want to encourage you to go to our website, familybuilders.com, or familybuilderspodcast.com. Go to our email, familybuilderspodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget about the website for our sponsor, MidwestChristianAcademy.com. All of these tools are available for you to help you in building your family. Brother Harold, that's all the time we have for this week. I hope you and your family have had a blessed week at the International Convention, and I look forward to seeing you again soon, maybe as you travel through beautiful, sunny Oklahoma. That's all we have the time for. If you don't have anything else, why don't you go ahead and take us out?
Sure. Thank you for listening to the Family Builders Podcast. Please subscribe and share this week's podcast with your friends and family. Also, if you have any questions for either of us, please do not hesitate to email us at familybuilderspodcast@gmail.com. Who knows? Maybe we'll even answer your question on one of our future episodes. Until next time, family builders, never let up.